African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javanokelo, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Greetings, beautiful people. This is another amazing day here in Seattle, Washington. It's been sunny, and whenever it's sunny, it's everybody smiles around Seattle. I spent it, of course, with my three daughters, Milele, Atieno, and Kenya. We were, in our backyard, in our little garden, and today what I learned is that, you could learn something from a child too. So Milele, my oldest, taught me how to count in Spanish, 1 up to 10, which is something that was very new to me. I teach her in Kiswahili and Luo all the time, and so it was my turn to be a student. But today, we are really privileged to be here with an amazing father, but also someone that I look up to as a mentor and leader, especially being a father like myself. In just over a decade, Boniface Mwangi has risen from, poverty to prominence in Kenya. He's renowned for his powerful photographs and his courageous protests calling for social justice. He's an award-winning Kenyan photojournalist and human rights activist. He was a staff photographer with The Standard, a leading Kenyan newspaper, for 4 years. He became the eye of Kenyans during the 2007 and 2008 post-election violence and showed courage and compassion to capture thousands of images, some so gory that they could not be published. His work has appeared in leading publications in the world, from the New York Times to the Guardian and Chicago Tribune, Los Angeles Times, the International Herald Tribune, the Sunday Times, the Telegraph, and the Boston Globe, among others. So today we are going to talk about the story of Boniface Mwangi. We are going to talk about why Boniface is passionate about photography and social justice. We are going to talk about what a father figure means to Boniface, how black fathers are perceived and how we can change that narrative, how black fathers can better support each other considering the times that we are living in, where white supremacy is eminent and black people's lives are not valued. And then we are going to talk about how you can all stay connected with Boniface Mwangi and follow his work. So with that, I just want to, welcome you, my brother, and I just want you to start by sharing with the listeners of the African Father in America podcast, your story. I had the privilege of reading Unbounded, a book about your life, and you are also the only politician I know in Kenya and maybe many parts of the world that never used any of your money to build up a campaign that was forbiddable. It was known everywhere, and it's a subject of a documentary, Softy, man, just reading the book, knowing you first, and then reading the book earlier on when this coronavirus pandemic started. There are times I was reading your book and just getting so emotional because, what you've gone through, you should not go through much, but you still go through a lot for people every day,
Thank you. Thank you so much for the kind words. I grew up in Kenya. Kenya has been my home my entire life.
Yeah.
And my story goes back to, I was born in a family of 7 kids. A single mother who struggled to bring me up. She was a street trader. She used to sell things in the streets of Nairobi. And I grew up in abject poverty. My life story is that my entire life was running away from poverty. I became a photographer in one of the biggest papers. And as a photographer, I was documenting social ills, police brutality, and things that are happening in the community every day. But my turning point happened about 13 years ago when I covered post-election violence. And it was very simple. Kenyans went to vote for president, and then the outcome was very disputed. Imagine Al Gore and Bush in Florida when they had a dispute about the election. And then instead of people engaging or having a very mature disagreement about the vote, Kenyans turned to each other. So imagine if in England and you have the Irish, the English, the Welsh fighting along those tribal lines, and that's what actually happened in Kenya. That after the election, people went to war against neighbors, brothers against brother, and there was violence in this country. Over 500,000 people lost their homes, and then over 1,000 people were killed. And my job during that time was to document the violence. But after the violence ended, the same politicians who people fought over came together and started eating together. And then eating here is for its euphemism for stealing. And it was like the time to loot. And from my job as a photographer, I couldn't stand it anymore. I could not stand the politicians. I could not want to cover their political rallies, and I quit my job. And that began my journey to activism, where I said, it's not enough for me to document what I'm seeing. I need to speak out and organize communities to fight for their rights, to fight for what they believe in, to stop to be tribalized or to stop being very tribal, and just to do political education among the people for them to realize that you should never fight for politicians. So that's where my journey began.
Right.
I began by showing my work in the streets of Nairobi of the violence and educating people about the effects of tribal violence. Then I started organizing protests and opened a space for artists and activists to come together and build a community of people who are like-minded. So when I began this journey as an activist, I did not know what I was doing. I was alone. And that is the reason why it gave birth to Power 254, which means power for power, and 254 is the country code, so for unity. And it became a place or the home for artists and activists where we organize. Yeah, that's my journey in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. You know, when I was reading your book, it also reminded me of my upbringing, you know. And I just want you to share with the listeners of the African Father in America, especially those who have never been to Kenya and those who are learning about Boniface Mwangi today, you know, when you're like 8 years old, think about a moment, you know, when you first held your first camera, and then share with us the camera that you have now, your current favorite camera, and just compare those two moments and paint a picture for us.
The first time I actually became a photographer, I had a camera was about 14, I think. And this is what actually happened. So there's a backstory to me becoming a photographer. So I was in a school, it was like a rehab school. It's like a Boston institution or juvenile school where they take people who are problematic, like I was when I was a child. And so I went to this school. There's a lot of bad things happening. Kids were being molested. There were drugs being sold in the school. There are many bad things that are actually happening. So I went to see a minister, a cabinet minister, to tell them about what was going on in my school. So I went to see him and I told him about the school, and he couldn't believe me. He said, we need evidence. So I go home and tell my mom, they need evidence of what's going on in the school. And I thought, how do I get the evidence and prove to the minister this was happening? So we realized that I needed to document, and I had to take pictures. And my mother then, she's still my mother, she passed away. And so my mother decided to buy me a camera, and she bought my first camera for about $10. $10 was equivalent to our monthly rent, because our monthly rent was about $8. So we bought the camera for $10. I went to the school and I took pictures and I took to the minister. He never believed me. I got expelled from the school for taking those pictures. But that began my journey of photography. So my first camera was a very small Kodak point and shoot. It was a film camera. Today I use a Canon 5D Mark IV. So I began my journey of photography in 1998. That's the first time I took pictures.
And I imagine you've taken thousands of pictures. There's some of your images I was seeing in the book, Boniface Unbounded, and also some of your images that I've seen, in person. I was privileged to visit, Power 254 when I was in Kenya last year. But remind us of a moment, your picture, the picture that is most moving to you since you started your career. As a young man, when the 1998 bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Kenya happened, you are also there. You are always in these places. I think God somehow puts you in places where history is happening. So, share with us, paint for us a picture of when you took one of these, this image that makes you feel like this is what you are brought on earth to do.
So I think I have a couple of pictures, but my saddest photo, and it's in the book. It's a photo about, it's about post-election violence. Actually, during the violence, there's a young girl who was shot dead by police. She was 13 years old, and she had not voted. She wasn't part of the riots, but the police were just shooting all over, and she got shot. And when she was shot, she was lying on the road, and she looked like my younger sister. And I remember the photo is actually of her mother crying and trying to close her eyes. When she died, her eyes were open. And I remember taking that picture and breaking down, like crying like a baby, because I saw my younger sister in that young girl. And I broke down. It's my most memorable photo for me, because it stuck with me until today. And I think it's one of those pictures that led me to become an activist because of what I saw during that time.
Man, my favorite picture, which is also described in the book, is the picture of this baby. I think it was the first fundraising picture that you did to support somebody.
Yes.
Man. Wow.
Yeah. So that photo is also very interesting. The girl's name was Samara, and she had a hard mama, and the family did not have money to pay for the surgery. So what happened is that I went to my editor and said, let's print this story or tell this story. And my editor said, you don't do the work of highlighting people's stories like that. But I begged my editor to allow me to have that photo published. So the photo was published, and she got a doctor to come all the way from the US to do the surgery. And now she's a happy, bubbly young girl. She's in her teenage years. So when I look back at that picture, actually, it's one of my best photos, actually.
Man,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's so powerful, so powerful. Now, I gave two people your book. I'm very passionate about you, and sometimes I just go online and check how you're doing. Even if I can't reach you, I always just pray for you. You're one of those people that I always want good things to happen for. Now, I gave two people your book. I still have a lot of your books, and I'm gifting them to very specific people. And recently, when the pandemic started, I gave my mother-in-law, who is almost 80, your book. And so I was reading it together with her, and the other person was the leading activist in Seattle, actually. His name is King Garrett, and his father was an activist too. And in fact, his father helped the African American community here acquire a museum to remember their history. And and this guy is the leader of Africa Town. He's trying to form like an African village in the Central District in Seattle. So he's advocating and buying buildings that African American people can get affordable housing in. He's just doing good work. But when I gave him your book and he read it, and my mother-in-law read the book, they both responded and said, wow, what a book, Some of the stories we've read in that book, wow, what a guy. Where is he? Like they were moved. How do you just deal with this impact that your work has on people, even people that have never met you in person?
First of all, thank you so much for the support. I think you're one of my biggest book buyers, and you've been very supportive on this journey. how do I deal with it? I think everyone has a purpose, and I think if my book would inspire someone to become an activist or to make a difference, then I'm happy. I shared my story so to inspire the people that you don't have to be very special or to be highly educated. I'm a high school dropout to make a change. That wherever you are, you can live a life to make a difference by playing a small role. So my life motto actually is to live my life to make a difference. And if by living my life inspires someone, it makes me glad. Sometimes it is a lot of pressure because you feel like you have expectations from strangers to play a role. But what I try and do is just live my life and see that by being an example, I make a difference by just living my life. It's not an act or a pretense. It's just me being me.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Now, I want you to just talk to us about, what a father figure means to you, because I know you're a father, and when I read your book, I learned about, your relationship with your father, and he was a police officer, right?
He began as a police officer, but he ended up, he was a district officer, one of those colonial positions. So I never grew up with my father. I met my dad in my teenage years, and he was never there for me. We are kind of friends, we talk, and he reaches out when he has issues or problems that require money, so he calls me. But a father figure, and not being a dad actually, I have learned the hard way that kids are very special in such a way that they don't hear what you say, but they see what you do. So it's a monkey do monkey situation. And the best example you can give to your kids is being the person you want them to become. So by setting a good example by your lifestyle, because kids can see through hypocrisy. They can see you're saying one thing and doing another thing. And the other thing that I've learned as a father is that my presence matters more than presence. That if I'm around and I'm present and I participate and I take part sometimes in their silly games, that means more to them than me taking them for a holiday while I'm still on holiday. I'm on my phone trying to solve people's issues. Or when they're talking to me, I'm on my phone. They used to have a joke in the house that if the dad is on the phone, you can ask him anything and he'll say yes, because he doesn't want to be disturbed. And so I've learned that I can't be on the phone when I'm talking to them. So it's just setting that example.
Right.
And the other thing, one of the things that I've learned, so my wife and I love each other very much, but like every other couple, we disagree. But you have learned to teach our kids that when you disagree, it's verbal disagreement, and you don't have to shout at someone for them to hear you. You don't have to touch someone for them to hear you. You don't have to push them for them to hear you. Because kids have these games where they push each other, they start fighting, like, oh, it's mine. You're like, no, slow down, that you can say everything you're saying without shouting at each other or fighting with each other. So my father example actually has been the man that I want my two sons to become, and my wife example to my kids, it's been the mother and the daughter she wants her daughter to become. So it's all by living our lives, we impact them. We have rules in our house, right? Like they had phones and you took the phones away from because they crossed the line by watching the TV very late in the night. They don't watch TV during the week. They watch TV on Friday night. We have a movie night. Then over the weekend they can watch during the night. During the day, the kids are supposed to be outside. It's a rule. Either reading or playing outside. Now there's a pandemic, so there's no school. So you're either doing your schoolwork because they're doing Zoom classes, or you're outside playing with your friends, or taking the dogs for a walk. We don't allow them any technology during the day. When they get back their phones, they have 1 hour on the phone for a day. So we're trying to set those examples for them early enough so that later on in life they won't be able to struggle with technology or addiction to social media. So such things, we build their confidence by doing things together and knowing that we have a very short time to influence them to go the right way. Because if I miss out now, by the time they're 16, 17, their mind is set, their ways are set, and it's over for me. So my role as a father is to be that man and that person they would like to live their life like. The people that I meet. I have a friend of ours, and I said, he's younger than me. And I said, if my son turns out like you, I'll be very happy. And the reason why he's like that is because the mother and the father were very good examples to him. So the society is imperfect. And we also are very imperfect. But the best we can do to our children actually is be a perfect example and to instill values they can live with. And that wherever your son or your daughter is in the world, you know they're fine because you taught them well. And you can never teach a child the way to go if you're not present in their lives. You can't use remote control parenting where you parent from a distance. You cannot let your nanny raise a child because they'll get your nanny's values. They may not be bad. The best example you can set to your kids, and if you're married, is to love your wife and to love your husband. And by showing love, and love corrects as well. So when they make mistakes, there's punishment.
And he just spoke, you know, to the choir. Let me say it like that. Yeah, because when your wife is happy, everybody's happy at home, you know.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, and I learned to take care of her and to take care of our kids. And I find that my problems are solved easily, you know. So it's amazing. But
a happy wife is a happy family.
Exactly. At the same time, you know, there is a perception that black fathers are lazy, black fathers are absent. And so, you know, you're one of the people that when it comes to Christmas season, I always wait to see the family picture, you know. You know, when you delay, I start asking what's wrong, you know. So, but not many fathers do that, you know. Many fathers are truly absent, and we know a lot of our friends that also struggle and they don't even want to take responsibility. So according to you, do you think this perception exists? And if so, how can we change it?
So it's a lie that black fathers are lazy. It's the black fathers and mothers actually who built America. If you look at the American economy, it was built in the back of slaves. Slavery wasn't a lazy position. No. They had to be working, they had to be beaten. But you also have to look at the criminalization of black people. Black people are dehumanized. Black people are seen as criminals. Black people are seen as a threat. Black people are seen as they're authored by American institutions and American racist policies. So a black man is already accused or guilty the day they're born. And so this perception about them being lazy and never there for their kids is actually a lie. You find someone who's going to do 3-4 jobs to bring up a family. Michelle Obama was raised by a black father and she came out bright, and so many other people. But we tend to focus on the failures of some few black fathers and make it like a general thing. But it's a lie. Black fathers are very present, but the discriminatory system in the US means that when that boy becomes a man, it's harder for them to get a job, it's harder for them to get promoted, it's harder for them to go to good schools. So they are already set up for failure by where they're born. So if you're born black in the US, you're already starting from a disadvantaged position. You don't have, a trust fund baby, you don't have generational wealth. You're starting to build from the scratch. So if you give the black men in America an equal opportunity the way they're giving white men in America, then you can never have this discussion. This will never appear anywhere. So it's all a perception, it's all a stereotype, and it's a racist stereotype.
But even if you think about back home in Kenya, we have this, is it called deadbeat fathers movement?
Deadbeat fathers, or deadbeat dads. So if you listen from a person who has been hurt, and they have a right to say that my dad was a deadbeat dad. My dad was a deadbeat dad. But I don't call every parent a deadbeat father. I have friends who are raising kids and they are not very present, and I call them out. I have family events in my house. As you mentioned, I send a Christmas card every year with a family photo and a family message. And when I hang out with my friends and I don't see them with their wives or their kids, I'm like, where's your wife? Where's the kids? So I don't expect you to come to my house and I know that you're married with another girl. I don't expect you to come to my house alone and you have kids and it's a family event. So the things that I actually call out on my friends. So the best role you can play as a friend to your friends is to tell them when they're doing things right or when they're doing things wrong. So I play my role, but the whole thing of black fathers are not responsible fathers is a lie. Because if we're reasoning like that, actually, we actually say white fathers are not good fathers, because in every shooting in America, it's a white child shooting people. It's rare. You never hear of black kids showing up in a school and shooting up their classmates. But every time you hear there's a white man who went and shot people in a church, in a concert, at their workplace. So because of those incidents, can you blame all white men for the sins of their kids? No, we can't.
Yeah.
So we cannot apply that stereotype on black men that they're not responsible fathers.
Right.
And we must do a shout out to actually African mothers and black mothers, because they're the best.
Right.
Let me tell you, black women are queens, man. They do the best job with us.
Yeah.
Because we're coming from a very dark history. For Africa, it's colonization. And for America, it's racism and slavery. And that means that we have a lot of trauma that is passed on from generation to generation. And that trauma has been there for a long time. And it's our black mothers and our black wives who have been able to mend those hearts and those wounds, because we start our lives broken. And even people like your wife, actually, she's married to a broken man who grew up with a lot of colonial and a lot of things that happened to us. So every day we're being mended and every day we're healing.
Exactly.
And you're hoping that by the time our kids are of age, you'll have healed from that trauma. And the problem is, you heal and then one day you're walking down the street or you're on social media and you see someone being picked by because of the skin color. And the trauma comes all over back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, man. It's crazy. Last night, the Seattle protest has been going on for almost 4 months now, since May. And last night, the protest came to our neighborhood late at night, and now they're going door to door. They're going to leaders' doors. For example, the governor. The protest goes to the governor's house at night, and they stay there until you get out and address them, and they ask you questions like, what are you going to do about this policy? What are you going to do about that? Anyway, so the activist I was talking to you about, why King Garrett is inspiring a lot of young people. It's like people in their early 20s are the ones who are leading this protest. And also women are the ones who are leading this protest. So speaking about black women, it's amazing to see what they're doing here. But also, when you talk about black fathers, like you or myself, that are dealing with, generational trauma and also ongoing trauma, how do you think we can support ourselves? For example, a mover like you who is always dealing with other people's problems, you need to stay sane. In the period when you are writing your book, I saw you running a lot, somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And, I just want you to share with us ways that we can support one another, both mentally and also, in ways that can help us withstand the current wave of white supremacy that we see globally. And we see that black lives are not valued. Even if you think about what's going on in Zimbabwe right now, that's white supremacy in black bodies. It's leaders that are perpetuating white supremacy and killing people. If you come back to the US, the way George Floyd was killed, it's out there and you can see it,
So how do we support each other? I think one of the ways to be there for each other, we have to realize actually that you are not the first activist in this world. There have been others before us. And one of the ways I keep myself sane is by educating myself and reading about Malcolm X is at the very back, Martin Luther King Jr., Fred Hampton, Nina Simone. There have been many, Maya Angelou. There have been many men and women who came before us, Sankara, Lumumba, and Biko. Like, we stand in the shadows of giants, and the way to be able to progress in this struggle is to learn from them. And one of the things you have to learn about the struggle, that is not an event. So the struggle to liberate is a lifetime journey, and it's like a marathon. So you need to pace yourself. If you sprint, you're going to die or you're going to break down. So do not sprint in this struggle. No, it's a marathon, and you need to pace yourself. And at the end of the marathon, actually, you don't win. You pass on the baton to your kids. Because in every struggle, you must remember that the gains that you get must be defended. So if you gain ground and you don't defend the ground, you lose the ground, and then you start all over again. So how do you stay safe? You need to find a way to unplug. And maybe it's by listening to music or dancing. I do hikes a lot. I hike every other weekend, and I walk with friends. We just go for like 30 kilometers. We're just walking out in the nature, and we don't talk about activism or politics, talk about other things. And we laugh about funny things, and we look at the birds, we look at the trees, and we just have a good time. The other thing I do is I exercise. I try and just make my body tired and get out of that negative energy.
Right.
And have people who can hold you accountable, people who can tell you that what you're doing is wrong or is right, or people who check on you and check on your status, people who are there to give to you and to replenish you, then people who are there to draw out of you. Because every day when you're working in the community, it's a very draining thing. It's draining emotionally, it's draining spiritually, and it's been draining physically. And so you must find a way to recharge yourself, and that's why you need people who look out for you. I would also like to add that you need to remember that you're not anybody's savior. So don't have a savior complex, and that means you can't save everyone. Play your role and do what you can, but don't think that without you, the world will stop rotating around its axis. Remember that you're nobody's savior. So do what you can. And then once you do what you can, be at peace with yourself with what you have done. Don't kill yourself overthinking about things. Because if you carry everybody's burden and you do not remember that you're just there to help and facilitate, not to carry people's burden, you'll be overloaded and you're going to break down or you're going to sell out. The reason why activists change and become part of the system, they get so tired by carrying people's burdens, and now they feel like I need to earn a pay, or I need to get paid, or I need to do these things, or I need to just join these people and fight from within, whatever reason they give. Is because they failed to pace themselves and go to a level where it was too much for them to handle, and something had to give.
Right.
So do not walk around with a savior complex. You're nobody's savior. You're just playing a role, just like our ancestors played their role, and then you'll move on, then our kids will take over.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. If you're joining us now, this is another episode of the African Father in America podcast, and you're listening to a conversation today that I'm having with my brother from another mother, Boniface Mwangi. We talked about Boniface's story, why he's passionate about photography and social justice. We talked about parts in his book and how, the work he's doing has an impact on people globally. We talked about what a father figure means to Boniface and what Black fathers are perceived, and how we can change that narrative. We talked about, what Black fathers can do to support one another. And now I just want you to know that Boniface is going to share with you how you can stay connected with him, but also he's going to share with you something that I may have not asked him, because we are coming to the end of our conversation today. So Boniface, please let the listeners know how they can stay connected with you, and also just share something that I didn't ask that you'd like everybody joining us today to know.
So how you get in touch with me is that is through email. My email is bm@bonifacemwangi.com, and I have a website. It's www.bonifacemwangi.com. What haven't I shared that I'd like to share? I think self-love. We need to love ourselves. There's no way you can change the world or change your community or society without loving yourself. So for you to be able to impact life and impact others, you need to have self-love. So activism emanates from a place of love. Love for your country, love for your community, and love for other people. And so, but you can't love others if you don't love yourself. And if you love yourself, you take care of you, and you're kind to yourself, and you forgive yourself. So self-love. And finally, I believe that you can never achieve anything without courage. And you need courage to love, and you need courage to live life and celebrate life, and you need courage to go out there and make a difference. So love yourself and be courageous, and together we can change the world.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, a more equal and just world is possible with courage and love.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be having a follow-up episode in the coming months. But, with this, I just want to thank you again, Boniface, for joining me today. And I want to thank you all, the listeners and viewers of the African Father in America podcast. Remember to rate us on Apple Podcast, and also add your comments on YouTube. This conversation is going to be available on YouTube as well. So thank you again, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Peace and love.
Peace and love. Thank you.
African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African Father in